Hi guys, I'm just checking in to see how everybody's faring. Obviously, we're in a very different place than we were 2 weeks ago. Thankfully, we are already comfortable with the online setting as opposed to many of our peers who are just now learning how to transition from face-to-face classroom education to this new distance learning model. So nothing on our end is really going to change, but I did just want to take a minute to check in with everybody. There's a lot going on. People are dealing with very different realities than they were just a few weeks ago. And you'll notice that the discussion this week is going to be maybe unrelated to our course, but I think it's important to maintain community now more than ever. I think that we need to band together and help each other to realize that everybody is in unfortunate circumstances. So be really honest. That's what that discussion board is for this week, is to let people know what you're going through. Did you lose your job? Are you stuck in a tiny apartment? How are your relationships changing, your mental health, your finances? How is this all impacting your education as we're trying to finish out the semester? I don't know if any of you are also taking classes face-to-face. So if that is an adjustment for those classes, how is that going? Just to kind of get us all checking in with each other. So this week we don't have any discussion in terms of poetry, but there's lots of reading in terms of getting ourselves transitioning from fictional elements to poetic terms. So a lot of those are explained in your Norton. We're going to read a couple sections in chapter 11, defining poetry. Those first couple pages I think are really nice just to introduce this new genre. People tend to be all over the map with poetry. People love it, they hate it. In my experience, more people hate it. I'll be honest, it's not my favorite. I prefer fiction, but it's all about finding the poetry that you do like. You won't like all of it, I promise you. But the book, for example, kind of talks about not liking music just because you don't like heavy metal, or if you don't like Lady Gaga, saying you don't like music. So you're going to get a lot of variety in this unit. The textbook gives you a lot of different types. We're going to obviously be exposed to the ones in the textbook. We're going to do a unit on Shakespeare, and we're also going to move forward to some more modern poetry. We're going to listen to some poetry slams and get some video where you're watching a person perform a piece of poetry that they have written. So there's poetry throughout the pages that were assigned. So there's not a separate poem, much like the fiction unit. Typically with the fiction unit, you read like a chapter with a fictional element, and then you also read a short story and answered some questions. So the only thing that's different this week is there's not additional poetry above and beyond what is within the pages that were assigned. And the one that you're going to spend the most time on, it's on page 746 by Aphra Behn. It is called On Her Loving Two Equally. And that's a really important section if you're someone who's very intimidated by poetry and you just never seem to be able to get anything out of it. That's going to really break down the process that people who have done this time and again, that they use to get something meaningful out of the poem. So I really encourage you to take your time with that section, to read the poem, how they read it. They ask you to read it out loud, and I think that's important, to hear the poem more than other genres, perhaps more than fiction. But it gives you like a 9-step process, and it kind of gives you their process on reading that poem, Aphra Behn. She was a Jewish writer in Victorian England. But the poem is not long. It's only 3 stanzas. Stanzas is one of the terms that you'll have to know. I explained that in the PowerPoint. So the quiz this week is going to be based on both the PowerPoint, which gives some new elements that are not in the text, and sometimes it's just reinforcing what's already in the text, but it wants to make sure that you're getting these terms that we're going to be using now to talk about these poems. So if you hear a peer mention an anaphora, or if they said the alliteration in the poem, you're going to want to know what those terms mean. So the book goes over those. The PowerPoint goes over those. And then we're also going to be reading from chapter 18, The Sounds of Poetry, which introduces some rhyme. We're not reading yet how to look at meter. That's a little complex, so I'm going to save that for next week so I'm not overly overwhelming you, just to kind of get our feet wet with this new unit. So I have not graded your fictional analysis yet. Mostly because my Hudson Valley students are transitioning from face-to-face to online, so I've been spending the last 2 weeks working on transitioning all the content that I have into a format that's more flexible for online, and specifically for students who are not at all comfortable with online. They did not sign up for that, so they're very weary, so I had to spend a lot of time just making new course content for them, but I will get to those they're not narratives, that's my Hudson Valley class. I will get to your fiction essays very soon, next couple days. You'll see those grades posted. And if you have any questions, please reach out to me. I'm hoping everybody's still hanging on and that all this mayhem is not discouraging you from keeping up in the course. You have a lot of resources available to you. Reach out to me if you need assistance. The food pantry is still available to students. I can get you information on that. Textbooks should be available to you in an online format. The nice thing that you're probably noticing is that people are kind of banding together. So I saw somebody on Facebook post, the world came together as people stayed apart. And I think that's really true and it's really important. So just know you're not alone. Know that we're all in new circumstances. I'm here teaching online way more than I was a couple weeks ago, and I'm also now doing it with no childcare. So if you hear any people shouting that they have to go potty in the background, I apologize. But I'm going to do my best to just kind of keep everything as normal for you guys. But if things are very not normal and you do need extra assistance, please don't hesitate to ask me. All right, guys, so I hope you enjoy poetry, or at least some of it. And even if you want to start a conversation about what poetry you do like, that might be interesting as I move forward, because I can always change what kind of poems we're assigning. So stay safe, wash your hands, and I'll see you next week. Thanks, guys.